I knew something was off the second I saw the footprint on the inside of my greenhouse door. It had rained the night before, and the muddy sole print wasn't mine. I wear boots with a distinct tread. This one was a shallow, flat-soled print, some cheap orthopedic shoe if I had to guess. And I had a pretty solid idea who wore those around here. Karen Delaney. She's the self-appointed queen of the Maple Hollow HOA. Middle-aged, sharp voice, bleached bob haircut that looks like it's never seen a drop of rain, and a clipboard that might as well be welded to her hand. She's been up my back since I moved in last year. First, it was my mailbox being an inch too tall. Then she claimed the paint on my porch clashed with the approved neighborhood color palette. And now apparently she had a problem with my greenhouse. I built the thing myself last spring, completely legal, within city code and far enough back on my property that HOA rules didn't even apply. I checked twice before I laid the foundation. But Karen had been circling it like a hawk ever since. I caught her taking pictures once from the sidewalk, muttering something about unauthorized structures. I ignored her like I usually do. But apparently she decided ignoring her wasn't enough of a challenge. Because now she'd trespassed. I swung open the greenhouse door and looked around. A few of my seed trays were shifted and one of my tool drawers was half open. Nothing stolen, but someone had definitely poked around. That's when I noticed the small HOA violation notice folded and wedged between two planters. It wasn't even in an envelope, just stuck in there like a passive-aggressive calling card. I took it out and read it. Unauthorized structure not in compliance with HOA visual standards. Cease use immediately. A formal hearing will be scheduled. No signature, but I didn't need one. That was Karen's standard lingo. It was her handwriting too. I laughed. Out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was so damn bold. She actually broke into my greenhouse on private property to leave a made-up violation notice. I walked straight back into the house, pulled out my lockbox, and grabbed the new deadbolt I bought for the shed a few months back. Within 10 minutes, I had the greenhouse door refitted with a heavy-duty lock and a new reinforced latch. No more turning the handle and walking in like she owned the place. Then I called the sheriff. When I explained what happened, the deputy didn't even try to hide his sigh. Let me guess. Karen Delaney? Bingo. She's been on our radar. I'll send someone out tomorrow to take your statement. If you've got any footage, keep it ready. She's lucky I haven't installed cameras yet, I said. But I'm fixing that tomorrow. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about how far she went. This wasn't just another fine for a trash can left out too long. This was her walking onto my property, entering a locked structure, and planting fake documentation like she was some kind of lawmaker. Well, if Karen wanted to play dirty, she'd finally picked the wrong guy. She didn't know I used to work in city planning. I knew the zoning rules better than she did. And now I had the law on my side. Next morning, I installed 2 motion cameras, one overlooking the greenhouse door, the other facing the side gate. Both synced to my phone. Then I printed out a private property no trespassing sign and nailed it right under the greenhouse window. And just in time too, because that afternoon, while I was trimming tomato seedlings, I got a motion alert. And there she was, Karen Delaney, clipboard in hand, reaching for the greenhouse door like it was her own personal garden shed. I didn't move. Just watched her through the greenhouse window as she rattled the doorknob with the same entitled confidence you'd expect from someone who thought property lines were a suggestion. When the door didn't budge, she took a step back, stared at the new lock like it personally offended her, then pulled out her phone. She paced in a small circle, muttering something I couldn't make out, probably calling one of her HOA lackeys to complain that someone had the audacity to secure their own building. I stepped out the back door and kept my voice even. Looking for something, Karen? She flinched, phone still pressed to her ear, then turned slowly like she hadn't just been caught jiggling a lock on someone else's structure. Oh, she said, lowering the phone. I was just doing a compliance check. On my private property? This area is under HOA oversight. No, it isn't. Boundary lines were redrawn when the city updated zoning 3 years ago. My backyard, shed, and greenhouse sit entirely outside your jurisdiction. You'd know that if you bothered checking city records instead of playing mall cop. Her nostrils flared, but she didn't blink. We reserve the right to inspect any questionable additions that might impact visual harmony. You don't reserve the right to break and enter. I didn't break anything. I've got motion footage from last night. You opened that door and went inside. You left a fake violation notice behind a planter. Want to keep going? She hesitated, then clicked her pen and scribbled something on her clipboard. If you're going to be combative, I'll have to escalate this. You already did. I filed a trespass report. Deputies are stopping by this evening to take my formal statement. Her pen paused mid-scratch. I suggest you don't come back here without a warrant or a badge, I said. Because next time I'll press charges. She didn't argue. Just turned and walked briskly up the side of my property, muttering under her breath. The deputies showed up just after dinner. A young guy named Morales and an older officer named Riley. Morales took down my statement while Riley reviewed the footage I'd already transferred to a thumb drive. Riley handed it back after a few minutes. Clear as day. She walks in, looks around, plants that notice. No signs of forced entry, but still she had no right to be in there. I've got the land plat and zoning map on hand too. Everything's legal. Appreciate it, Morales said. We've had other complaints involving her. Nothing this blatant though. This'll go straight to the county attorney. What happens next? I asked. She'll probably get a formal warning first, Riley said. Depending on the DA's mood, maybe trespassing charges. If she pushes back or starts retaliating, we'll escalate. I nodded, but I wasn't satisfied. People like Karen didn't stop just because they got their hands slapped. They doubled down. The next morning, I stopped by City Hall. I wasn't there to complain, I was there to prepare. I asked for copies of every HOA permit, variance request, and enforcement action filed over the past 5 years. The clerk, a woman named Lisa, raised an eyebrow when I gave the HOA's name. Maple Hollow? She said. That's the one with the president who keeps requesting surveillance licenses. Right? Surveillance. Yeah. She's tried to get permits to install neighborhood-wide audio monitoring equipment. We denied her every time. She says it's for safety and compliance. That made something click. Would any of those denials be public record? Every single one, she said, already printing. By the time I left, I had a folder an inch thick and a USB drive loaded with audio logs from city council meetings where Karen had tried, and failed, to push through increasingly invasive policies. One proposal even suggested fining residents who didn't report suspicious behavior within 24 hours. That night, I started compiling a timeline documenting everything from her failed permit requests to complaints filed against her by other residents. I created a spreadsheet. Dates, actions, outcomes. I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to show the entire neighborhood who they'd let run wild. And then, 3 nights later, things escalated. My front yard motion sensor lit up around 2 in the morning. I checked the app on my phone and saw 2 figures near my driveway. One of them crouched by my truck's rear wheel. The other was holding something looked like a clipboard or a tablet. I pulled up the mic feed. Sure, he left it unlocked last time. Just check the cab. If there's anything in there, I hit the floodlights and stepped outside with my phone already dialing the sheriff's office. The 2 figures bolted. One dropped what looked like a small camera on the grass. I picked it up, it was still on, red light blinking. A tiny audio recorder with a Wi-Fi module attached. Someone had tried to bug my vehicle. The sheriff's office responded within 15 minutes. This time it was Riley again, and he didn't look amused. Same HOA lady? He asked as I handed over the device. Can't say for sure, but someone tried to plant this under my truck. He took the recorder, turned it over in his hands. We'll run the serial. If it's linked to any account, we'll know. I didn't sleep much that night, but I wasn't afraid, I was angry. I'd dealt with bureaucrats before, but this wasn't about rules anymore. This was about power. Karen had been allowed to run unchecked for years, using the HOA as her personal fiefdom. She'd gone from citations to surveillance to outright trespass and now, possibly criminal harassment. The next day, I walked door to door. I didn't preach or accuse, I just asked questions. Had they received strange notices lately? Had their trash been inspected? Had anyone seen Karen walking around their property with that clipboard? What I learned was worse than I'd expected. One neighbor, a nurse named Dana, said her mailbox had been opened and photographed twice. Another, a retired mechanic named Bill, told me Karen had once threatened to report his granddaughter's service dog as a nuisance animal because it barked once during the day. She says she's got the board's approval, Bill said, but I've never seen any vote. No transparency, just memos. That was the key. Karen ruled by intimidation, not consensus. It was time to take that away from her. I organized a meeting the following Saturday. Not a formal HOA meeting, just neighbors gathering at my place. I printed copies of the city records, surveillance denials, and the spreadsheet I'd assembled. I also brought the footage of her entering my greenhouse and the police report confirming the incident. The turnout surprised me. At least 30 people showed up. Some brought their own documentation, fines with no citation codes, warnings for violations that didn't exist in the bylaws, even photos of Karen peering over fences. I stood in front of them and said one thing: we've all dealt with her alone. It's time we deal with her together. That night, we formed a committee not to replace the HOA, but to audit it. We called it the Neighborhood Oversight Review. We'd request financial records, document abuses, and petition for a special election to replace the current board if necessary. And we had the leverage we needed to make it happen. Because the sheriff's office called me the next morning. The device from my truck? Registered to a tech vendor out of state, purchased using a Maple Hollow HOA credit card. Under Karen's name. I met with Deputy Riley again the following Thursday. This time not at my house, but inside the county administrative building, where the sheriff's department shared space with the district attorney's office. They called me in after the tech team confirmed the surveillance device planted near my truck was purchased with HOA funds. The serial number traced back to a bulk order of 6 identical units made 3 months earlier. She bought 6, Riley said as we sat in a small conference room. This wasn't a one-off. She's been wiring the neighborhood. He laid out a printed vendor invoice. The purchase was routed through a generic-sounding shell company, Community Compliance Solutions, which turned out to be a fictitious name registered by Karen herself. She used personal identification to file the DBA with the city clerk, he said. We confirmed it through the Secretary of State's office. I rubbed the back of my neck, trying to wrap my head around how deep this went. So she was funneling HOA money into a fake company she owned? Looks that way, Riley said, which makes it fraud, wire fraud, and misuse of HOA funds. The DA's office is prepping a warrant for her residence and the HOA office. The next morning, 2 unmarked county vehicles rolled into Maple Hollow just after sunrise. I watched from my driveway as the officers stepped out plainclothes, but clearly not here for a friendly chat. No sirens, no drama, just quiet precision. They knocked on Karen's front door. When she opened it, they handed her a packet of papers and entered before she could protest. One stayed outside, making a call while the other 2 disappeared inside with her. By mid-morning, they'd come back out with 3 boxes and a laptop. I didn't see her again that day. Word spread fast, but the residents didn't panic. In fact, a strange calm settled over Maple Hollow. For the first time in years, people were talking out in the open. One neighbor trimmed his hedges while chatting with another about forming a new bylaws committee. A woman across the street laid out sidewalk chalk with her kids, music playing from a small Bluetooth speaker without the usual fear of a noise violation warning taped to her door. I met with the Oversight Review group that evening. We gathered in Dana's garage since she had the largest space and folding tables. Everyone brought something: coffee, copies of financial statements, stacks of old newsletters, even a portable scanner. Take a look at this, said Bill, the retired mechanic, dropping a folder in front of me. These are the minutes from quarterly HOA meetings, only 2 in the past year, both held without public notice. They're required to announce them with at least 10 days' notice, I said. and they have to maintain a sign-in sheet. No sign-ins, he replied. And the only attendees listed are Karen and 2 people I've never seen. Dana slid over her laptop. We cross-referenced the names. They're not residents. One's her cousin. The other's a guy who lives in a different subdivision entirely. That explained the rubber stamping. She'd held fake meetings, created fake approvals, and used those to greenlight purchases that no one authorized. We documented everything. By Sunday, we had a full dossier ready to present at the emergency town council meeting we petitioned for. Over 50 residents signed the request, more than double the number required. The council agreed to hear us Monday evening. We packed the courthouse annex that night. The room was meant for a dozen spectators, but over 60 people showed up, some standing in the back, others sitting on the floor. I recognized nearly every face. Councilwoman Reyes called the meeting to order. We've received a formal petition from the residents of Maple Hollow regarding alleged violations by your HOA leadership. Who will be speaking on behalf of the petitioners? I stood. My name's Eric Nolan. I live at 228 Briarwood Lane. We've uncovered substantial evidence of financial misconduct, unauthorized surveillance, and fraudulent documentation by Karen Delaney, president of the Maple Hollow HOA. I kept my voice steady as I laid out the timeline. The unauthorized use of HOA funds, the fake company, the surveillance devices, the trespassing incident, the police report, the confirmation of 6 hidden devices purchased with association money. When I handed over the printed invoice, Reyes adjusted her glasses, reading it silently before passing it to the city clerk. You say these devices were used to monitor residents without consent? She asked. They were planted near vehicles, entryways, and yards. One was found beneath my truck. Sheriff's deputies confirmed it was active and transmitting. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I continued. We also discovered falsified meeting minutes, non-existent board members, and a pattern of enforcement that doesn't match any documented bylaws. Residents have been fined for violations that don't exist. Councilman Herrick leaned forward. Why hasn't anyone come forward sooner? Dana raised her hand and stood. Because we were scared. She threatened us. Said she had the city's backing. That she could raise our dues, foreclose on our homes, revoke permits. We believed her. Another neighbor stood. Then another. Each told their story. One had his daughter's birthday party shut down for being unregistered. Another was told her garden hose violated aesthetic standards. A man in the back said he stopped parking in his own driveway because he'd received 3 warnings for vehicle placement. Reyes held up her hand. We'll need to verify these claims, but based on what we've seen tonight, I'm issuing an immediate suspension of Maple Hollow HOA's enforcement authority pending further investigation. The room erupted in applause. Outside afterward, people shook hands, hugged, exchanged phone numbers. Someone brought lemonade. Kids chased each other across the grass while parents stood in clusters, talking not about violations or dues, but about block parties and shared tools and community gardens. Karen was nowhere to be seen. 2 days later, the sheriff's department executed another warrant, this time at the HOA's storage unit. Inside, they found 4 more surveillance devices, dozens of sealed violation notices with blank addresses, and a ledger detailing unapproved expenditures going back 2 years. The DA's office charged her with wire fraud, misuse of funds, criminal trespass, and unlawful surveillance. They also filed a motion to freeze the HOA's bank account pending audit. A temporary receiver was appointed to oversee operations. The Oversight Review Committee was officially recognized as a transitional advisory body. I was asked to serve as interim secretary. At our first formal meeting, we voted unanimously to suspend all fines, dissolve the current board, and initiate a new election with open nominations. No more secret votes. No more hand-picked cronies. We also passed 2 new resolutions, one requiring full financial transparency with quarterly reports posted publicly, and another banning any surveillance equipment not approved by a 2/3 resident majority. A week after the courthouse meeting, I walked into my greenhouse for the first time without glancing over my shoulder. The plants were thriving. The lock still held. I added 2 new rows of sweet peppers, the starts gifted by Dana after she divided her crop. As I watered the beds, I heard laughter from the street. Kids playing. Music drifting softly from someone's open window. Life finally without the echo of a clipboard tapping on concrete. Karen's reign was over, and for the first time since moving in, Maple Hollow felt like a neighborhood again. The morning after the council meeting, I stood at the edge of my driveway holding a manila envelope I hadn't expected to receive so soon. The county clerk's office had fast-tracked our Oversight Review Committee's request after the sheriff's department confirmed the depth of the HOA's financial misconduct. Inside the envelope were copies of the newly issued subpoenas, authorizing a forensic audit of every HOA transaction from the past 5 years. The scope wasn't just administrative anymore, it was criminal. Councilwoman Reyes had pulled me aside after the meeting and said something that stuck with me. "You didn't just blow the whistle, Eric. You opened a vault." And she was right, because what we found next wasn't just mismanagement or power trips, it was full-blown embezzlement. Dana and I spent that afternoon in her garage-turned-command center, sliding receipts and bank statements across a folding table. She had a knack for numbers, probably from her work managing hospital budgets. I handled city documents and permit maps. Bill was upstairs scanning forms, uploading PDFs into our encrypted drive. "Look at this," Dana said, pushing a monthly report toward me. "Landscaping fees $3,000 a month. But the company listed here? It dissolved 2 years ago." I checked the business ID. She was right. The landscape contractor Karen had claimed to use didn't even exist anymore. "Then where's that money going?" I asked. "We're about to find out." We traced the payments through shell accounts. One of them matched the same routing number as the fake surveillance vendor. Another led to a checking account in the name of someone listed as a consultant on the HOA's annual budget, someone we later confirmed was Karen's nephew, a college freshman who'd never set foot in Maple Hollow. With that, we had enough to push for a full criminal investigation. I forwarded everything to Deputy Riley, who looped in the county fraud unit. By the end of the week, 2 forensic accountants were combing through the HOA's ledger with gloves and magnifiers like it was a crime scene, because now it was. The auditors discovered over $70,000 in misappropriated funds, landscaping payments to ghost companies, consulting fees to non-existent employees, and even a set of community development grants that had quietly disappeared into a personal bank account under Karen's name. The district attorney didn't hesitate. They filed charges for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. But that wasn't the worst of it. A few days later, Riley called me at home, his voice unusually tense. "There's something else," he said. "We got a search warrant for her second storage unit. Found a hard drive." I didn't say anything. She recorded people. Not just with those audio devices. She had cameras too. Hidden in birdhouses, light fixtures, even one tucked in the HOA's community message board. Hours of footage. Some of it. "Well, it's bad." "How bad?" I asked. She filmed inside windows. Bedrooms. Kids' rooms. She kept logs. Labeled them with names. My hands clenched around the phone. "Has the DA seen it?" "Yeah. They're adding charges for illegal surveillance of minors. We're notifying every household who may have been targeted." I leaned against the wall, trying to process it. What had started as a petty power trip had spiraled into something darker. And it had gone on for years. That evening, the Oversight Committee met in person. No laptops, no phones, just a locked room above the community rec center that we'd rented with our own money. Everyone sat in silence as Dana read aloud the new list of charges. No one interrupted. No one looked away. Then Bill stood. "She did all this because no one ever told her no," he said. "That ends now. We rebuild this place. Together. And we do it right." We agreed to draft a new charter, one that limited the HOA's scope to maintenance and communal areas only. No more fines. No more inspections. No more weaponized bureaucracy. We would elect a new board with term limits, financial transparency, and an independent auditor. The vote was set for the following month. In the meantime, the court appointed a neutral trustee to safeguard what remained of the HOA's funds. Karen's accounts were frozen. Her assets, including a rental property she'd kept hidden, were seized pending restitution. When deputies finally arrested her, it was quiet. No cuffs in front of cameras. She was taken from her home early one morning, escorted into an unmarked vehicle, her face hidden behind oversized sunglasses. But the damage was done. Her name was already in the paper, and the charges were public record. Still, it wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration, and it came faster than I expected. The trustee authorized refunds for every bogus fine collected over the past 5 years. Residents received checks in the mail, some for a few $100s, others for thousands. One woman cried when she opened hers. It was enough to cover her son's college deposit. The neighborhood changed overnight. People painted their porches however they liked. Kids could draw chalk murals across the sidewalks without fear. Bill built a small shed for his tools and no one said a word. Dana planted sunflowers along the community trail and a dozen neighbors offered to help water them. The greenhouse became something of a local landmark. I invited folks to come by, take clippings, ask questions. Someone even suggested hosting a fall harvest potluck. We set the date for October. By the time the election rolled around, we had a full slate of volunteers. No one with a clipboard. No one looking to control. Just residents who wanted to serve. The new board was sworn in on a sunny Saturday afternoon. There were folding chairs, lemonade, even a guitar player from down the block. I gave a short speech, nothing dramatic, just a reminder of what we'd been through and what we'd built in its place. Afterward, I walked back to my house, past the gate, past the garden beds, and finally into the greenhouse. The tomatoes were ripening. The sweet peppers had outgrown their cages. I pruned a few branches and adjusted a drip line, then stepped back to admire the rows. Quiet. Safe. Free. And for the first time since I'd moved into Maple Hollow, I realized something simple and profound. This wasn't Karen's neighborhood anymore. It was ours.